Okay, so we are live. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Right now, we are live in the factory. Probably it doesn't look super cool, but those are the two screens. You guys will just see it through screen sharing. I would like to first have a quick round of introduction to our speakers. To your left is Henry, who's React Native developer, who has done React Native for over several years, 4 years, I guess, and is now in the journey of becoming a successful entrepreneur, doing a cohort and entrepreneur first, and also has been in the React Native community. I think you built a module or something, an NPM package or something. So that's nice. And the fun fact about Henry is that he knows Chinese and he teaches Chinese on his YouTube channel. Thank you so much for accepting our request. On your right, we have Sasha, who is going to show you how Flutter rocks. I hope it rocks. Because yet I'm not a believer on Flutter, so let's see how it goes. So then Sasha also did several years of experience, almost a decade, I guess. And I've been using like React for several years. For 2 years, he has been doing Flutter, actively working on Flutter. So we'll have a small app build in both React Native and Flutter. We'll split it like in multiple rounds so that it does not get boring. And please do ask questions. Whenever you have like a question, just interrupt the speakers, ask a question, because it's going to be a long session. If we keep the Q&As at the end, either you will forget about it or you will really get bored during the talk. So let's keep it as vibrant as possible and let's start it. Please go ahead, guys, for a small round of introduction. Meanwhile, I'll share the link with the posts I have done and then we'll carry on.
Let's start. Can you start from?
Please, turn on your microphone. Either of you guys, please do a round of introduction.
Okay, it feels a bit weird to put on headphones sitting here. Thanks for the introduction. And actually, it's already much said about me developing React Native, developed a few apps, and have a bridging module up there, which like a thing you have to build when you want to implement a feature. But right now, there's not a React Native way of doing it directly in JavaScript. And you somehow have to pull some code, Objective-C code, for iOS side and some Java code to fulfill the Android side. And I did that for, there was a Bluetooth beacon, which I used. And there was a SDK for each native platform, but not for React Native. So built that. And yeah, sometimes speak at meetups and conferences. But yeah, happy to be here and please really ask anytime. Interrupt me all the time. And
Okay, my name is Sasha Parkhavenko. I'm a software engineer. I have experience about a decade in developing software. I started with developing IoT stuff about 10 years ago with Python and JavaScript, and about 6 years ago I started to develop for mobile with Objective-C and Swift. About 3.5 years ago I started to do things with React Native, and 2 years ago I started to explore Flutter. And you can find us on GitHub, you can see. And and today we are going to build 2 applications, one with React Native, another one with Flutter. And what we are going to build, it will be
not share your screen.
Yeah, that's complicated. Pardon. How I can do that?
Maybe you can use my screen to see where you're standing.
How to share a screen?
It's in the middle of the screen, a green button. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Oh.
Clarity. Need to do permission. Sasha doesn't like Zoom.
Yeah.
We need to build something better than that. There you go.
How do I disable audio in Zoom? Because I'm hearing Sasha twice.
Probably you just need to take off your.
I'm sorry for that.
Okay.
Open, again.
For people who might be listening online, sorry guys, we are just facing a difficulty with Sasha's screen sharing. You will definitely need that to see how Flutter code works. So please hang on with us. If and only if there is somebody. Since we're doing it for the first time, and I'm not expecting a lot of people listening live, but the recording will be on YouTube, so you guys can watch it later on. There you go. We got Sasha's screen going on. Perfect.
And we are going to build quite simple application, which is will fetch data from some mock server, which will ask list of images, and when user tap on image, will display name of after. So I think you can start.
Okay. Good. Okay, let's jump into React Native development then. No, you have to stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay.
So in the meantime, who of you has worked with JavaScript before? Okay. Who of you has worked with React? With React Native? Also a few. Okay. Working with JavaScript or like in front end, who of you has used Flexbox for styling? Okay. Good. So just for me important also to see like, okay, what you guys know or don't know, I've heard of. Good, so let me share my screen. Okay, so hopefully now so the online community can see. All right, so here's my terminal. So when you do React Native development, you can start from scratch, like at the beginning, just with React Native command and the initializer project, or you could also do it with Expo. Has any one of you worked with Expo, the ones who worked with React Native? Okay, so Expo, let me check this out. Actually, I think DuckDuckGo is, okay, even DuckDuckGo finds it. At first, so it really gives you a very nice experience as a developer, develop React Native apps. We will soon see in a moment why. And that's why, and actually also the React Native documentation always shows examples of Expo. And that's why, so it really, I see it becoming the kind of almost default way of beginning React Native projects. And that's why we will also use Expo here. And with Expo, there's a nice init command. And so please stop me again at any point when you want to interfere or just ask any questions.
Expo is command line, command line tool?
Yes, exactly. They've got a CLI and command line.
No graphic interface.
Not that I know of. Anyone of you like whether there's a graphical user interface for Expo?
There is a graphical user interface for Expo. You can run, but still you need to initiate it from the terminal. But then you see your goal, you can have a QR code where you can scan it and see that, yeah, there is a GUI, but it's not like 100% GUI. You have to initiate.
Yeah.
I think
but you will see it. But you will see something which looks pretty in the command line in a moment. So Expo init is like the command to start. And here it offers you different workflows, the managed workflow or the bare workflow. The bare workflow is very similar to what you get when you just initialize via the React Native command line to interface. And the managed workflow is the cool thing, which really you will see makes development a bit cooler. You can choose TypeScript if you want, or something where already some navigation with tabs is in place. We'll build a simple app this time, so we go for the blank one. Then we choose a name. Which name should we choose to get a bit interactive for this cool app? You saw how it should look like. Huh?
Victorio.
Huh? Sorry?
Victorio.
Victorio, okay. Victorio and Victorio. Okay, so we will use Yarn, the package manager. I like it more than NPM. Who of you has used Yarn before as a package manager? Okay. So right now, actually, there's not a big difference. So the newest version of NPM is also like a good choice, and you don't have to be scared that the developer just takes off their package from the repository and you are left with all your stuff not building anymore. Yarn actually was the one which made that a bit safer. So let's do exactly what they said here for us to do. We cd into Victorio, and so yeah. And you're all familiar with the command line, or who's not using the command line on a daily basis? Or is everyone who's using the command line on a daily basis? Okay, there's some people who are not. Oh yeah, you are? Yeah. Okay, everyone is, okay. Good. Just, are you confusing us? So now we're saying yarn start, exactly what they told us to do. And you see now also like a, yeah, it should be a browser window. And something should be happening here. Here it already is in the command line with a wonderful QR code. It's a bit huge. Let's start. Let's see what does it say here. Oh, we can also start simulators. So I just press I. And now my iOS simulator opens, which you have to, of course, install before. Is it by default? On OS X systems.
Add something here, or
yes,
maybe
sure.
you're already planning to tell about the Expo. The good thing about Expo is that the build happens on their servers, so you don't need to have Xcode installed, or you don't need to have a MacBook to build iOS apps. So you can build it in Windows and then just deploy it.
Ah.
Yeah. Pardon? On Linux, on any operating system where you can have at least a web browser.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, because that I wanted to demonstrate then, actually, like you feel it more. Like first of all, here on the right-hand side, you see the wonderful app we have, which comes default with Expo, has a wonderful black text in the middle and some white background. Looks beautiful. And this is the screen which opened here in the browser. And it also has the wonderful QR code, but now in a way that it fits in the screen. So I can just use my photo app on iPhone and get it to the QR code. Now it says open in Expo because I downloaded the Expo client on my phone. And because the whole thing is on Expo servers, I can directly, hopefully soon. No, it doesn't work. Actually, the thing is, it doesn't work with the Wi-Fi here in the factory. You have to be in this. No, you don't have to be in the same Wi-Fi.
But this bundler needs to be running. When you're sharing the link with somebody, then you have to. There's a catch.
No, because now it's not working because I'm really running the local thing here. Yes, local. But I could also, like as I'm sharing it over LAN, I could also create a tunnel. Right. And then it should, let me see, then maybe it works even with the, here with the.
Dependency on Expo. What if they pull the service or?
That happened a few times.
Yeah, you can, but you can always eject your project.
So you can make it pure eject.
Yes.
Right.
You just eject Expo eject, I think is the command. Okay, and then you are back in the bare, and you don't have the advantages of their workflow, but you can still.
Does it still work then? I mean, it has more advantages than just the flow, right? It also has integrations and the camera.
And so, yeah, no, yes, but these are open source also, and they are based on other packages. So yeah, if they take away the tools, yeah, then of course
I
you have it
think
on
we
your
got,
computer. You could create your own open source packages out of that. The community sometimes, you know, knows the way to.
But it wouldn't
Yeah.
be that
M-
if they should.
Yeah, no,
I
wouldn't
have
expect.
a quick announcement. Anybody who is interested in speaking, please do talk to me as well. And that could be a good topic for next time, Expo versus pure React Native. Yes, as Henry said, you can eject it. And the good tip is that do not eject it until you don't need to eject it. Because Expo comes with a lot of off-the-shelf APIs like push notification, camera access, push like accelerometer, and all the things that you need for a mobile app. But you only eject it once because you can't go back and then you lose all the community updates. So don't eject it right away when you install it.
Like, for example, one really cool thing about Expo is like you don't have to do really painful upgrades of React Native. Sometimes they have really bigger breaking changes, and Expo, you have to then update Expo versions, but they kind of do the messy work behind the scenes for you.
So they do edit the code, do update the code base.
Yeah, so no, when you update Expo,
Yeah.
their Expo update contains React Native updates sometimes, and also contains updates of other dependencies you have, and make sure that the dependencies work with the newest version of React Native.
But if in your project some old React Native APIs are used, do they convert your code to the new version?
If some older, no, not ever, like the ones which are compatible. So you can, instead of like when you usually on a code base and you install, let me open a new tab, you install a dependency. I have to make that bigger as well. Yes, you would perhaps Jan add, I don't know, React Native camera.
Yeah,
But with Expo, you've also got Expo install React Native camera, which makes sure that the dependency really works with the React Native version, which is part of the Expo.
Can you use like your own native code dependencies inside Expo, or can you only use dependencies that are already integrated? Can you like write native code and use that in Expo?
I didn't do that yet, so that I don't know. Because you don't, like, you will see it in a moment when I open the code base. It's hidden from you. Yes, so yeah, just want to answer this one question. Or did the audience, like I think, the online people didn't hear the question even. Maybe just quickly repeat whether I have access to then, whether I can also add native code here via Expo easily. And here you see in the managed workflow, I don't have the iOS or Android folders available directly. So I would have to eject. Yes, could create your NPM package. So I think then at this point, is there any question? Oh, sorry. Any further question at this point?
So in this round, what we saw was how to kick off a project. And that's how it looks like. You have a phone in your app, for example, Expo, where you can browse it. Now we will see the same thing in Flutter, how you can kick off a new project and like boilerplate like that. Okay. And then we'll switch to the first chunk of the code that will come from React Native. So now, all to you, Sasha.
So I have one question. Who use Flutter like in any case, like in any situation, like in production or play it maybe in Flutter? Anyone tried? Okay. So then I will make a small introduction. Flutter, that's universal UI toolkit created by Google and supported by Google. It's free and open source. To develop application with Flutter, you need to use Dart language. It's also a language which is developed and supported by Google, and Dart is modern language. It's statically typed language. It has all these features like generators, async await, extensions. To get started to develop your application with Flutter, you need to have Xcode installed on your machine and Android Studio with SDK. And usually, when you develop application with Flutter, you can do that with Visual Studio Code or with Android Studio. And Google provides you extensions for Visual Studio Code or plugins for Android Studio. And Flutter has quite great documentation.
When you say universal, public. When you say universal UI framework or library, you say, what do you mean by that? Does it also imply that you can build web browser-based UI?
Yeah,
Can you please shed some light on that?
With Flutter, you can build mobile application for iOS and Android. You also can build web application. You can also build desktop application, and you can also build like separate UI for embedded devices. So if you will have time, just visit this flutter.dev and read all this documentation about how to install it. It's quite straightforward. I'm not going to spend any time on that. To create a Flutter project, as I said, when you have installed your Flutter tools, you just need to open terminal and type Flutter, create, demo 1. Let's call it.
Not Victoria.
Huh?
I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's a project name.
And Flutter for you creates all these required files. And we need to wait a bit. And at the end of creation, it also will run Flutter Doctor. That's utility which check if you have Xcode installed, if you have correct path to SDKs. Let's run it again. It's Flutter Doctor. Let's put flag V and run it again.
Is Flutter crazy fast, or do you just have like a crazy big? Oh, that was a lot.
Yeah. It's fast because this computer is quite slow. It's only 2 cores, and yeah. So, and when you run this Flutter Doctor, it's sometimes can be very handy because you can see what version of Flutter do you use, on which channel you are, which Dart version you use. All this required information about Android toolchain, Xcode toolchain, Chrome now, because now Flutter supports web, etc. And it's also check if you have installed your Flutter and Dart plugins for Visual Studio Code and Android Studio Code. Yeah. And for example, if you have some issues like you not accepted Android license, it will show you and recommend what you need to do. And let's switch to our demo 1 folder, and let's open it in Visual Studio Code. Oops. It's okay? Yeah, and let's quickly explore what we have here. We have Android folder, which contains like real Android project with all files which Android developers knows. iOS folder, which contains just normal Xcode project. And lib folder, that's a folder where you usually write your Dart code. Test folder, that's folder where you write your test. A bunch of different files which like not very important, but we have here one important file which called pubspec.yaml, and that's a file where you can add third-party dependency or dependency from Google. And in this file, we can also add your assets like, you know, HTML files, images, fonts, and so on. And later we will use it during our application development. And here you also can set your Dart version on the environment SDK. I will update this version because like recent stable Dart version is 2.7.0.
I have a question. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm taking your turn, but please feel free to ask questions. Like we have NPM for the repository package management. What do we have in Flutter?
Flutter has own infrastructure to manage all this dependency. You need to use pubs. That's some special format which Flutter and yeah, we can check it. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's.
How many packages? Like, is it
I know it's 1,000, I believe now. Yeah, and many packages is supported by Google, like all this Firebase things which you can imagine is supported by Google. Also, like you know, some plugins for deal with hardware, like with sensor or with something like that. It's also supported by Google, but also we have a lot of community packages, like probably is the most famous, that's Block. And that's, yeah, that's for state management. It's like, it's short from business logic component. Yeah, it's quite interesting pattern, but that's like, yeah, we can discuss maybe on some different meetup. And so let's.
So when you say Block, would it be the Redux alternative equivalent?
Yeah, like many people use Redux.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, and this question was about is Block is alternative to Redux. Like my personal opinion, it depends on you and your team. It's like your decision. I don't see any like cons in Redux to compare with Block or vice versa. It's just like team decision. I used to work with Redux when I developed for React Native, but when I started to develop for Flutter, I decided to give a try this block pattern, and I discovered that I'm just more productive with this block pattern. Yeah.
Is it immutable or is it muted? Like one way.
Yeah, that's not an easy question.
No, like because of maybe I ask this question: is block immutable or it is mutable? Because Redux, like those arrows I can see, is it like bidirectional data state changes or unidirectional?
Yeah, it's a bit different than like it works in React world. Yeah. If you use, for example, in Flutter, we have we have hundreds of widgets, but two of them are more important than others. That's stateless widget. That's widget which doesn't have any mutable components, variables inside. And another one, it's stateful widgets. That's widget which has mutable states inside. And with block pattern, you can use stateless widget and stateful. That's why I said it's complicated.
Yeah. Any other questions to the basics of Flutter?
Okay, let's.
Do you have anything else to share, or should we switch to?
I just want to spin the application.
Oh yeah, please.
Yeah.
The most important part. I thought that's it, and now you have to write 200 lines to show the world.
I just updated this Dart version, and let's switch to our main Dart file. That's entry point to our application, and let's start iOS simulator. And we need to wait a bit. It's starting. Okay, it started. Oops, huge one. And let's navigate. Yeah. And let's navigate to the back menu. Let's add configuration to start the application, and let's press play. And now we need again to wait because Flutter at this moment will use Xcode build system. And as I mentioned, this computer is quite slow, so we need to wait.
The first build takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I also probably need to mention that Dart has two types of compilers. The first one that's just-in-time compiler, and this compiler Flutter used to deliver this hot reload feature, which I will demonstrate you like in a minute. And it's usually used during development and debugging. But when you compile the application for distribution and release, you use another type of compiler, which called ahead of time compiler, which generates very optimized code for binary code. So two types of compiler. So that's simple application. Yeah.
Maybe we can already take like a quick look, like switch grounds, like from. So that is how we saw that you can spin off a project. Now let's take a very quick round so that we can respect the time, although we have enough time. Like explain the anatomy of this specific Hello World example and try to tweak something with CSS, alignment, font size, background color, whatever suits you the best. And then we'll switch it and then we'll go to build the app after that. Now we'll give it to, maybe we can already start from Sasha. Is that okay? Because the screen sharing switch will take time.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll go there.
So here we have our small application and entry point on each Flutter and Dart project. That's the main function. So, zoom. Okay. Cool. And here we have stateless widget and stateful widget. But let's concentrate just on this stateless widget.
What is a widget?
Widgets, it's like components in React, if you're familiar with. It's widgets that's basic components for which you use to build your UI, and you can combine these widgets in any way you can imagine. So let's, for example, change title on navigation bar. Let's press save, and it's constantly updated. What else? Let's, for example, change this navigation bar color. Let's make it red, press save, and it's constantly changed. It's hot reload, which I mentioned, which Flutter used to make these updates, and it used just-in-time compiler from Dart to accomplish that.
In line number 29, I see something like a destructuring in JavaScript. Can you explain that kind of a syntax? Yeah. What does that do in Dart?
No, that's not destruction. That's
typing.
Not typing. That's initialization of object.
Okay.
Yeah,
pretty confusing.
It's
for JavaScript developers. Okay. So what does that? Maybe you can explain a bit more.
When you create stateless stateful widget, they usually have like building matter, which we can see here. This one. But it also can have initialization. Pardon. But sometimes you need to provide initialization for this object. Yeah. Yeah, like a construct. What else?
Any other question? Okay, now let's go to React Native and see how the anatomy of a normal boilerplate looks like.
Okay, good. So you saw there are some similarities when starting the projects, and I also then realized when Sasha actually presented what Flutter is, that I didn't really tell what React Native is, but basically like the same as Flutter, a framework to build mobile apps with using just one code base, getting out platform agnostic apps, which work on iOS and Android. And Expo also delivers for the web, but that's still in development.
And if you go one step backward, like React, because React and React Native are like 90% the same. With React, you can build even desktop apps, web apps, and React Native.
So yeah, they're working, like with React Native next to just mobile platforms to also cover other ones. But yeah, like from my experience, when also building like SaaS systems, having React Native and React apps, so far building everything in one code base is still tough. Yeah. But yeah, that's like the goal. Okay, good. So let's jump into the code here and see, is this big enough? Yeah, a bit smaller. So yes, here we've got some things which are related to Expo. We've got our node modules where all of the dependencies and NPM dependencies are stored. It gives us also some assets here. You saw like maybe an app icon and the splash screen. We saw the splash screen in mobile development is the one which you see directly in the time when the app loads. Sorry? Not sure. The question was whether the splash screen has to be an image, and I'm not sure. Yeah, so
how do you do different screen sizes with just one image? Does it scale or?
It would scale, yeah, but I'm using like Expo. I so far rather used for toy projects or like smaller developments. The big apps I worked with were like are always ones which like yeah, the ones who work in production with the original React Native way of building it.
And on React
so
Native, are the images as well, or how does it work on?
You could also add images, but I would have to look into the project now.
How do you make this splash?
No, I think I did with images.
Okay.
So, yeah. Then we have got our file git ignore for our Git project. App.js we will look into in a second. This is like our starting point for development. This file app.json that comes with Expo. And here we have things like the app name, the slug, which we set when we installed the whole thing. That's the Expo SDK version. We see which platforms we want to build this thing to. And then we can also set the splash screen image right here. We can also then customize it a bit more and set some other things and also many more options, which you can look up in the documentation. But this is also like to ease the way of development for you. For example, also for setting the app icon, the way you then like do it in when you do work just with React Native, you would also then have to go into Xcode and there set the images of all different sizes. And so this is made easier for you here. Yes, so let's skip Babel config and your package.json, which contains all of the dependencies. Okay, And so app.js here, the file where everything starts, and then you can set up your whole folder structure where you then put in other files yourself as you want to. Let's go from top to bottom. We've got imports from React, which is really like the the backbone of all React Native. We've got different components and other things which we can get directly from the React Native dependency. Actually, now everything in React nowadays is a function. So classes get more and more unpopular. And so we've got actually basically this one function where we start. You see that here also Expo is hiding from us all things around that. We can directly begin here. And our styles are here given in CSS in JS, which might look a bit weird when you did web development before. You see, like, for example, background color is giving us, like, is written in camel case and not what you're familiar probably with from web development in that manner. And it wouldn't, like, that's the way it would look like in CSS. And here we have this camel case version. And so they actually implemented the styling here for JavaScript. Okay, where's our app here? Here's the simulator. Let's move the window aside. Oh yeah, while that happens, wait, let me also start an Android emulator. So then you see that we directly have it in iOS and Android. I'm also starting Android Studio here, but actually I only have it right now to use the AVD manager, where I'm starting a Nexus 5X emulator. This was already the project when I tested the whole thing. Let's take this one out. Okay, and now from the whole Expo menu, we can now press not the button I for iOS, but A for Android. And let's take a look at the emulator. And now it should also load our application.
How do you do your development when you're working on a real project? Do you have like both emulators running at the same time, or you use a real device?
Yeah, so it depends on what you do. So I did also a lot of work with Bluetooth. And for example, Expo doesn't support Bluetooth at the moment. So you cannot work with Expo when you do that. And there I always have to test stuff with a real device. But for developing UI, I use emulators, like just much faster, easier. Although with Expo now, that's also really fast and easy. You've got hot reload also on your device.
Almost the same on Android and iOS.
So they're taking, the modules they have there, or like the packages, they take into account, how I say, like the style guides or of each platform. And so they've got components which then look differently on iOS and on Android, given what is used there. Like, for example, for a select box, like in iOS, you've got this thing which, maybe not this thing which goes up and down. It looks different depending on the platform, but you could also like try to make it the same, like when you create your custom components to make it look the same.
Just by using custom styles?
Depending on how, like how much customization these things allow you.
On the visual or behavioral?
Yeah, the behavioral, of course, but
you have to develop.
Yes, the behavioral you have to develop, and visual you can also develop. Like you can customize them in certain ways which they allow, and sometimes you reach a point where you cannot customize it the way you want it. When you want to have it look exactly the same, you would have to do it. Sorry.
Is there a way to create custom use?
Custom use? What do you mean?
Custom use, like I want to draw a human pictogram.
Yeah. What do you mean? Like I want
2D animation like happening.
Yes, yeah, of course. Like animation, there's an animation framework built in there.
No, I want to draw it by myself. Like
You could
like
create an
custom
SVG, like an SVG. You can also make into a React component, and then
but
you
I
can
want
change
the
it.
whole custom view. I want the round like dial to like we have on our I don't know
Yeah.
car.
Yes, you can build things like with
Can I build, like,
with main building blocks, like you've got like the div in React Native. Like I wanted to talk about this part. Like the div in React Native is a view, and then this you can also shape, and you can put views together. You can change the border radius of a view to get a circle,
But
and create
there is
objects.
No way to draw a view like from scratch.
To draw a view from scratch, I don't know exactly what you mean.
Maybe I can
Someone is-
add something. Like whatever you can do with CSS, with the web, basically you can do it with React Native. CSS 4.3, I don't know if there's 5.
No, so they've got their own like you see CSS, they develop themselves.
No. Yeah, but let's say you have like you know how to give a border to a div, right? Like you give a border, you know how to give a radius to a div and then make it a circle. So basically that kind of stuff. A real circle, like yeah, yes, a round thing or a sphere. So whatever you can do with CSS, which you can do a lot, like with HTML5 games, you can do everything, like even 3D rendering using.
Games provide canvas.
Yeah, so you have canvas here as well.
Yeah, really?
Yes, and that's what the SVG rendering will happen on. And even I think you have WebGL for rendering, and inside this.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's pretty much open to any kind of animation. So all the 3D rendering, all the animations that you do in React Native is, as I said earlier, 90% like React. So whatever you can do with CSS, you can do it here, maybe like 90% of the time. But there are some edge cases that you can't, because here you use JSS. It's not like CSS. For example, pseudo selectors cannot be done here. I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, if you can do styled components with React Native.
No, you can. And I'm using styled components all the time with React Native. And so given that, you can also use the way CSS the way you are familiar with. And there you just get to the edge or to the border of what styled components already has implemented. And like the CSS here is also that has some things which are not in standard CSS, like padding horizontal and padding vertical. It does exactly what you'd expect it would do. And yeah, it's a bit different than standard CSS. And you've got like the React components here, as you know, and the React elements. Here your virtual DOM is a different one than the one in your browser. So the div is here a view, and the span is a text, and always written with a capital here. And let's change something. What's the name again of our app? Yeah, tutorial. Okay. And you see, as soon as I save it, live updates. Then let's also change the background color. Yeah, no. Something wonderful, light green.
Thank you so much. Thanks. So I think we got a very big picture of how things work in React Native and Flutter. Now is the time we should start working on the app we plan to do. So in order to reduce the number of switches between you guys, you can already start working on that app, the Pictorio app that we plan. Okay. And then we'll switch it to Sasha in a bit.
Okay, good. Do you, Sasha, maybe want to show on your screen how the app will look like from the slides? So I think, and so here's the Flexbox coming into play, because we are covering with Flex 1, we're covering the entire screen. When I'm taking it away, whoops, there you see, it's left up here, hidden behind the status bar. So let's first add that. So in Expo, we've got, I think these are called the Expo constants. Let's do development Constants. Like we do when we start. So we have the expo constants, and they've got here the status bar height. So this one we can then add. So import constants from expo constants. And expo constants is already pre-installed when you install expo. So we create, oops, you see I'm also used to real CSS margin top, and we have constants dot status bar height. Okay, let's add, whoops, and where did the simulator appear? Yes, and now the status bar is hidden, and expo here also really, let's see whether that also worked for the, why didn't this update here? Let's see, wrap. Note. Yeah, I see some of the Android emulators a bit slower. And doesn't want to show. Yeah, let's see what happens here. Let's open the other windows. You see I've got my iPhone 11 here. Oh, this is my phone. And here I've got the Android emulator. So not sure what's going on. Let's kill, there it is. It just took a bit of time, but we see also here the status bar is hidden. So it really takes into account then the actual device which you get. Turn the screen. Yeah, you mean whether it dynamically updates or not. So yeah, exactly. Yes, so then you would probably, so far, like the apps I always created, we forced them to be in portrait mode. So I can also not answer that. So we made our lives easier with forcing that. So let me see, how can I rotate it?
There's an icon on the right side.
Yeah. So which one? Here.
I think in the config you had it set.
Yes. So okay, then I have to. Yeah. But maybe let's not focus, because we have not in time for this one. So maybe that you can check there. But I would also guess that it wouldn't probably work. Wouldn't update. Okay. So let's show our simulator. Okay, so we just saw that it works in both, but I will stick to the iOS simulator for now. So on the top, we want something called photos. Yeah, and let's see, we want to give it some styles as well. Here, our style, because we have got our style sheet down here. So let's say styles dot, maybe let's call it header, something, header, and we increase, what do we have to increase? The font size. Let's see, maybe even a bit bigger. And then let's have some padding, vertical. I don't know. And you see, I don't give pixels here. I just give the number directly, and it uses pixels, maybe 10. Okay, and so I think now as a first step, I also just add a list view, not yet adding the real photos, but just a list. But first a question, yes.
If I would want to use percent instead of the pixel number, would I just add the percent symbol?
Yes, but then you have to put it into quotes. Yes, and like that begins in the beginning when you use React Native, you always forget the quotes. Well, that happened to me often, and then, yeah, what happens then? Yeah, then it's annoyed. Okay, let's go back this one. So I want to create a list. So let's go with like a React Native starter. and type in React Native list. Okay, there's a list view, official React Native documentation, but it directly says that's deprecated. So one of the new list components like flat list or section list, we don't want any sections here, I don't know, let's take the flat list, sounds good. And that's actually now the standard list you use now, flat list. And you see here inside the React Native documentation, they're having here Expo applications built with Expo directly here as an example already in there. And you can change here, whoops, iOS. And then it like here opens an emulator in there.
Play around with the code, that's editable.
And you can directly edit it as well. So let's see, what does it, next to the title, we make some, not saving this, yeah, make exclamation marks and it directly adds them. So this is a basic example and I think this really looks good. So let's copy paste stuff, yeah, let's take this flat list. We want this one. Let's stick it down here. And let's just, without thinking much about the code, copy it in.
Isn't that what we do all day long?
Yeah, so just business as usual, and then just throwing stuff in, waiting for errors, which guide us along. Cannot find variable flat list. Good. Good call. Thank you, debugger. We add the flat list. And so, hooray. We've got exactly our code in there. Just what's annoying here still, that this list is a bit too small. We want to have it bigger. So let's add the flex 1. Now it covers the whole thing is covered. But what did we forget? Oh, here we forgot.
Same style name.
And we forgot here, we forgot to add the styles. So when you don't have styles there, it's friendly, you know, like JavaScript is friendly to users in the web, that it will just run and not fail with a big error. It will just not use any styles. But here are the styles. Here, item, title. Let's add these styles, and we can just take these styles, whoops, add them in here. Okay, so now we see that already looks quite similar, like we had there. And let's maybe just get rid of the color now already. Okay. Oops, why isn't the color changing? What's going on here? Oops, that's not easy to see. Let me rather look at the error here. Oops, that looks very, what's happening there? Get derived state from error. What did I do wrong? Didn't change much.
It was changing to white.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, it does work.
Ah, of course. No, what did I? Ach, that's the item. Sorry, I thought I'm changing. Sorry, I wanted to change this one. That's why I'm. Sorry. Okay, I changed the wrong thing.
Same style for upbar and for the flat list.
So what is the comment? You mean like we've got the same style?
Yeah, for upbar and for flat list.
We've got the same style for the flat list and for?
Upbar. Like,
This, you mean the bar, like you mean the header?
yeah, like flat photos here.
You want a different color here? Which color do you want? Okay. No, not here. Sorry, you want in the header. You want a different color here, right? So which one do you want? Green. Ah, but because that's okay. That's not for.
I think you can play around with
I think
colors.
we will
We
take
will
care
switch.
of the colors.
Yeah, meanwhile you're playing around with colors. Let's switch to
Okay.
Flutter and see that much of work, how you can do it with Flutter. And then we'll switch to bringing those images from an endpoint that we already have. So time for Sasha.
Okay, let's get started from deleting all this code.
Now we'll see how fast you can do it. Maybe next time we'll run a format where we will let them do it and we'll just watch how fast somebody finishes.
So let's define our entry point app widget, and then let's use status widget because like our application won't have any mutable states. Let's name it app. Cool. And Flutter can. Thank you very much. Flutter. In Flutter, you can define like main behavior of your application, if it will behave in material design way or in Cupertino design way. But when you use material app, that doesn't mean that all your elements must be only like from material world and only will behave in material world. That's even so. If you use material app widgets, that you anyway can use Cupertino widget inside material.
Are you going to use material?
Yeah. As entry point, I'm going to use material. And
for those who don't know, material design is the design language from Google. So whatever you see in Android is actually from.
That's material, yeah. And material app widget has a bunch of different properties, and all the stuff is documented, and we have a lot of examples. But we are only interested in only one, and it's called home. And let's for home define our main screen. Let's call it main screen. Main screen. And let's create this main screen straight away. And that's also will be stateless widget. And for this moment, let's use another widget which called scaffold, because on our design we can see that we have this navigation bar, or whatever you call it. And from my experience, I know that a scaffold widget works the best for such a design. And let's check what properties scaffold widget has. As we can see, it also has a bunch of different properties, but for our application, we will be interested in app bar because we need to display this title. And we also interested in other property, which is called body. So let's quickly define that. App bar, and for app bar, we use app bar widget. And this app bar has, again, a bunch of different properties, but we're interested only in background color. And let's set that color to white, colors to white. And let's set brightness. Yes, white. And let's set our title for navigation bar, and this will be text widget. And let's say photos. Let's add a bit of styling. And for styling, we use another widget which is called text style. And let's change font color. Let's use, for example, colors black color, and probably let's change the font size. Font size, let's say 24. Let's save it, and let's add the body. And for body, we will use container widgets. It's another type of widgets. It's like container. It's like self-explanatory. And let's just change color of this container. Of course, red. Let's say red. And let's try to run that up. What? Okay.
You can help everyone who React. If there's an error, you have to solve it yourself.
No, I just think that when I was connected to internet, the new version of Xcode was then downloaded. That's why I have this message.
That's like, you know, coming from a React background.
Yeah.
Syntax looks like a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But if you come from, I know, from Java world, it's yeah.
Deborah, can you share your insights to the community?
Oh, I said the syntax looks like a pain in the butt.
So basically, one of the participants, Gabriel, thinks that it's a pain in the ass, basically speaking, as compared to React Native. And that is one of the questions actually I got from people who could not participate, which I think it's a good time to answer, is like React Native uses Flexbox. And it's so easy for a web developer to learn React Native because they bring all that web development knowledge and CSS knowledge, and they know how to create a box, give round borders or whatever, as compared to the way this new metaphor, or this new methodology of stacking UI, the way you just did, like scaffolding and then app bar and then all that convention that is only Flutter specific. So considering that context in mind, what do you think is the learning curve too steep? Is it easy to learn Flutter or not, considering that fact of you have to remember how you put these components together as compared to the way the component world of React works, or especially the CSS part? That was a question coming from somebody who could not participate. And I would like to get an answer of both of you. Maybe you don't need to share your screen, just a few words until the build runs.
Yeah, like from my personal experience, for me, it took about 3 weeks to start to developing with Flutter. And as you know, I have experience with native development, with Swift, and I have experience with React Native development, with JavaScript and TypeScript. And
did your experience with Objective-C help?
Yeah, I have. No, it doesn't. Yeah.
That's also not CSS based. So.
You mean Flutter or?
With Flutter, like the way this looks, it's more or less like Swift.
It's more like Swift UI.
Yeah.
It's more like
so
Swift
then
UI.
that knowledge help you learn that in 3 weeks versus somebody starting right away without having an Objective-C experience.
It's hard to answer this question.
Actually, I just want to know, is the learning curve more Dart or more Flutter? Like, what's the hurdle like? Because for me, as a React Native or someone, you know, I have to figure out this language, and then there's Flutter as well, right? So
yeah. So definitely, so definitely, you need to know Flutter and Dart. Yeah, because like Flutter is like a huge UI toolkit with some specific, with hundreds of features, which you just at least need to know that they exist. Because I still discover new widgets each week. Yeah, and Flutter has, I believe, the best documentation in the industry. But you just need to find a time to dig in that documentation. And for me, after Swift, Dart, I think I saw the Dart is ugly. But after like 2 years of work with Dart, I think now the Dart is better than Swift. Yeah. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, because that's not about all this beauty of language. It's also about of library which you have, and like to compare it to Swift, we still don't have async await. We don't have generators, and that really helps during real life application development. And yeah, we have in Dart we have async await. I said that in Swift.
Yeah. So what's the question exactly for React Native?
The question was like, how steep is the learning curve for React Native as compared to Dart? I mean, Flutter. Definitely, you need to learn Dart for that.
Yeah, I think it really depends on your web development experience, because React Native really, for the most part, it's React. And so if you know JavaScript well, React well, then it's quite, and you know Flexbox, for example, and then it's quite okay-ish to go React Native. Like then maybe the biggest hurdles are really to, for example, the animation framework. There is something you have to get used to, and then really thinking of always say, okay, I'm in the app, and I think it's more than really this user experience side. You're not tapping on stuff instead of clicking, and there's no hover. That's like sometimes like, hey, yeah, we could just do a hover, and no, I get this often in Teams discussions. So I think that's, but when you are starting off and haven't done any React before, yes, then I think it's like in React. Yeah, you first have to learn React, then you need to learn some state management library which goes with it, and yeah, then it's can also be steep.
I've got an idea. Somebody want to volunteer a couple of hours, a few weeks, who doesn't know either of these two, and then starts learning each of them for a few hours. And then maybe we have these weekly calls, which is called Ask a Developer. It's also online, it goes live. And then you can come on those sessions, and then you share your experience with the community. How did you feel learning React Native, and how did you feel learning Flutter? I'm going to do the same for Flutter and speak about it. And maybe if you guys are interested, both from this room and also people listening, if you want to participate in such a contest, please let's do that and share a few experiences. Okay, let's go back to building the app. Put your last view. Let's see how complex that is.
Yeah, as you can see, we now run our application on iOS simulator and on iPhone X or Pro, something like that. And as you probably know, iPhone has these notches, and I'd like to fix this problem with notches. And to do so, that's quite easy in Flutter. You can just wrap this container widget in another widget, which is called safe area. Save it, and it's fixed. I have a bit different strategy building application, and I'd like to start off defining model. Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's a good time to spend to type and all this stuff.
I would say no.
Yeah, I will just copy and explain. Yeah.
Yes. Since now you're starting from model, then it makes sense you finish the entire app, and then we switch only one time, and then Andrew finishes the React Native app.
Like that.
And then we go for drinks.
Okay. So then I will open. Oops, this one. Finish it.
Something prepared.
Yes. What?
We first did this kind of a format between Swift and React Native. And I can see only one participant is from that time, Lars. Sorry, Lars was. So you were saying that you're a good person about the Swift and React Native. Yeah. So we did this kind of a format before. And if you guys want to do such a format and you know one language very well and you want to put it on a competition with another, maybe we change the format a little bit differently, like have like a contest time for 15 minutes and see if who comes first and then we give them a chocolate or something. But if you guys know any language and you want to participate in this kind of a format, please do let me know. We are looking for further speakers. There is no pay, but we will give you a beer.
So let's check our API. Like we have this mock API which returns a list of objects, and I want to define a model for this object and just copy from finished project and explain step by step. For people who use some static type of language, it will be quite simple to understand. We have a bunch of properties like ID, after, width, height, and in this class I define them like final. Final darts means that property must be assigned during object creation. And here I create a photo object. And it's all cool, but we need to somehow to parse data from networking request. And for that, we will define a factory method, which we will name like from JSON, photo from JSON, which consume some map with string and dynamic values. And then we just map over JSON, our JSON.
It's worth mentioning that Dart is a typed language.
Yeah.
That's a plus point over React Native. For React Native, though, we do have TypeScript, which is a beautiful superset of JavaScript, but for Dart, it comes off the shelf.
Yeah, and let's also define a static method which will parse not just only one object, but a list of objects, and return a list of photo. And let's name it parse photos, which is consume response body from a network request, which we will define a bit later. And for that, we can use JSON from Dart convert library. It's just simple casting string to map, string dynamic, and then map over result to create list of objects from our parse data. Nothing. Yeah, okay, yeah. And I also want to define an additional computed property, which I named image preview URL, because our API returns quite huge images, like, ouch. Yeah, and definitely we don't want to load huge images in our list, because we anyway have small screens about 600 pixels width, and I am just defining computer property for that. Yeah, nothing special. And because it's like to example, we are not going to build some serious networking stack, and let's define our networking call like a free function. and it will be a async function, which will return future. That's like promise in JavaScript, but in Dart. And to do that request, we need to have HTTP client, and that's where we need to point to pub.dev, search for HTTP client. Here we can check README, change logs example, but we are interested only in installation. So let's just copy that line and add to our dependency. Let's save it. Oops, typo. That's keyboard. Okay. Okay. Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, and let's now import this function, this package here. HTTP. And from this library, we need to only use client. Let's use show keyword, save it. And when we make GET request to our API, we will have our response. And here I want to make JSON parsing not on main thread, but on background thread. And for that, I use compute function, which is available in Flutter, and that's just make parsing on separate, yeah, on separate thread. Ouch.
Just make the magic happen.
Yeah. Wait.
We trust you.
Okay, I'm just trying to explain this thing. Actually, I can just switch to. Yeah, really?
No, you can also see the GIF running in your slides.
And okay, now we have a list of our photos. Let's define a stateless widget, which will be responsible for displaying only one image. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This stateless widget has photo properties. That's our object, and has a function which calls value change. That's function, generic function which can return object, and we are going to use this function to handle user interaction. Speed up. Not yet. Yeah, it's yeah, and this and to handle user interaction, I wrapped all this image widget in gesture detector and attached our on top function to it. Okay, yeah, and now now we need let's create another stateless widget which will display. Yeah, which will display list of photos. Hopefully it works. And here, because we decided to build our application for iOS and for Android, and I wanted to demonstrate that we can handle this different behavior. I need to import Cupertino package. It works, and .io to check on which platform we run our application. That's quite big widget, but it has only one property. That's list of photos. And so let's, we're almost there. Almost. Something like. Yeah. Okay, let's copy this main screen. In the beginning, we had just a container, but now we are going to replace with final implementation. I will, hopefully it will work. It's crashed because we completely changed the state of our application, and we need to rerun it. Yeah.
And the footprint of a dark, like a Flutter application is much longer, I guess, because I can see that you need more lines of code to build a UI.
Yeah, but that's because it's a statically typed language, and yeah. And if you have this safety, you need to write a bit more code.
Yes. Okay, so that will run now the app with the images?
Yeah,
okay.
It should be.
Just so that we can see.
Let's pray.
Sasha, you know Swift, you know React Native. You also obviously like an experienced senior engineer, tons of experience. So why is it that you kind of switched over to Flutter now?
Yeah.
Just a second. You asked this.
Yeah, sure.
We need some more faces.
Absolutely. So Sasha, you're an experienced senior engineer. You have experience in Swift, React Native, et cetera. Why have you switched to what seems almost exclusively doing mobile development in Flutter?
Flutter is fast, and that's very important for me and for my clients. And I don't want to compromise on performance. It's very important. I'm more productive with Flutter, despite that I need to write more code. But and Flutter has great tooling, like all this hot reloading. Now they have hot UI for Visual Studio Code, all these Flutter utilities, like I demonstrate, like Flutter Doctor and so on, and has hundreds of widgets which is supported by Google and developed by Google, and it adds some guarantees that this application will work. Yeah. And like I use Flutter for about 2 years, and I only needed to write some native code once or twice just to try it. Yeah. And when usually I use Flutter to build application, which is like JSON viewer, or I don't know, if you need to interact with some Bluetooth devices or whatever, you never need. You almost, I will guarantee that you will never need to dig in Swift or Kotlin.
Okay, wow, thank you for the answer. Really good answer.
Sasha, is the build there, or can we switch to
I don't
React
know
Native?
what's happened.
Because I'm sorry, guys, we're running out of time, but we have to be fair and give that much time, or at least enough time to Henry as well.
Maybe then I just can switch to background.
But you can keep doing it. Meanwhile, there you go.
Okay,
there
yeah, that's we also have such a thing which called Dartpad, and where you can write your Flutter code, like a real one, and run your application in browser. So that's
technically we are at 88 minutes, so we have 2 minutes left for React Native. Can you do it in 2 minutes? so let's go ahead with React Native and take your time. Don't worry. And you guys also, please feel free, go get a drink from the fridge. But we'll see how cool it is doing it in React Native. I'm being biased in React Native. But I'm not representing anybody, so I'm just representing myself. Come talk to me.
Yeah. Okay. So, for the guys online, we will look now into what we actually copy pasted here. So we've got the flat list, And here it has some data you have to provide. The data is given up here as an array of objects. Please stop me when I'm too fast, but like I kind of feel some time pressure. We have to define, sorry, let's hide this. We have to define a function to render each item. Each item is one object from here. Like we get that as input and then have to render it in some way. Here it's rendered with another component, the item component. The item component, which we can see here. And a key extractor is given because React Native wants to uniquely identify each element inside the list. And we do it here by an ID, which is given. And thankfully, there's also an ID given here in the API, which we're using. OK, so let's now go. We don't want this like static data because we want to have, we want to load the data from the pictures. So let's first start here. We want to somehow get our data, and we will use something new in React, which is a hook. So, oops, sorry. So we will, like maybe you used React with classes so far, or you already used, or like who used hooks before? Okay, so this is like now in React we can keep everything as functions, but we and for lifecycle methods or things we want to do, like having some, how do you call that, side effects. we can add them here with this. Use effect hook, for example, and what we have here, we want to fetch something from the web, which is a side effect. And so we will fetch, oops, here from this page, given, yeah, like we get 100 images here. And this is a promise which we get back. So this is a response we get. I cannot type response. And so, and this response has a JSON, and this we want to then put somewhere. Where do we put it? We create a local state variable with the use state hook. So I will first write it down, and then I will say what I'm doing. So we will call this map apps data, set data. So what is use state? We can set some local state, which we only use inside this component with the use state hook. We set an initial value here, which is just an empty list. We will then fetch the whole list of 100 objects. The data will be inside here, inside this data variable. And set data is a function with which we can set the data. And this one we will use here. We get the data, and then we set the data actually to the data we get. And actually, in the use effect hook, the second argument tells you actually when this will run. If I don't set an argument here, this fetch would occur in every render. And otherwise, I can here say, no, it should only happen if something changes. But if I don't put anything, it will only run once in the beginning, in the initial render. OK, and now I want to, I have the data. So I replace the data here in the list. I can throw away this guy and save, and let's see what we get so far. Yeah, we only get exclamation marks. Why? Because I added them here, and it wants to search for a title, but in the current API we have no title. So we have, let's just quickly see to see that the whole thing works. The author. So we have here in the render item function, you see we have here a new component with one property, title. Let's just keep it, let's just fill it with some life. And now we've got all the authors here in a list. Amazing. OK, but we don't want the authors. We want the pictures, right? Good. So we will let me, like, I want to have the authors available, and I want to have the picture available. Whoops. But let's see what we can. Let's look at the API. What have we got? We've got the URLs here. So here's a download URL. No, I will not copy down on it because I don't want to have only one picture. We use the power of variables to get many pictures. And so each item has a download URL. So let me call this prop URL. And so that we're feeding that into item. Item is up here. And you see here the structuring going on. So actually what we get here is props, but we are directly accessing the elements of what we get via the structuring. And so we get, what do we get? I have it written down here, the author and the URL. So now I have to change, like when I reload, now it says, ooh, I want to use title, but you didn't give me any title. So I'm giving him the author, and now he's happy again. Let me remove this exclamation marks. But now we actually don't want the text anyway. Let's throw out the text. And so now we can use an image, a React component. Image, now it will complain because I didn't, yes, image is not defined. So image I get from React Native. And so what will be in there? So here it has a source property. So I prepared that, and I also had to Google image, what is the name of other names of the props, but because I prepared, I know it's called source. And then here I can set the URI, as a UI, I can set the URL. Nothing to see there, because we also have to add width and height. So, but let me just quickly to show you, like React Native image, that's how I would Google it. Look into the documentation. Again, an Expo example. And here I would see, for example, here, whoops, how it's used. And you see here, it's also width and a height given. So style, I don't know. Let's just take some values and okay, nice. This looks pretty. Let's just get rid of the color, get rid of the margins. Let's see, get rid of the padding. Well, we want to have some margins.
Perfect.
So
that was like 2 minutes, I guess.
Okay, some margins, nice.
So,
but wait, just one thing
okay,
missing.
you get more time.
Just one thing missing.
20 more seconds then.
Okay, so you see, we still have this thing, we want to click on them. If we remember, like click on them, then we get the author. So let's make the whole thing interactive. A view is just a thing to look at. To make it interactive, we need a component called, how they're called opacity something. Touchable. No, not that. So let's see, maybe it's touchable, yeah, touchable highlight is one, touchable opacity, so they're different one. Let's take the highlight, it doesn't look so nice, but let's take that one. Okay, so first, whoops, what did I do? Of course, wrong place. Oopsala, this doesn't look so pretty. It's okay, it's loading here because we've got big images there loading. I don't take care about optimizing the performance now. Oh, it's a nice image. Good, and now, so what have we got? It's the same, but, oh no, it can't be clicked. Let's see what's going on. Doesn't show me any. Let's take the touchable opacity. Then we see. So this, after a while, so you can look up in the documentation. Sorry, what's going on? Touchable opacity. Let's import that. And now we see, yes, so this is now clickable. Wonderful. But, and so now we define here an on press callback. And so here, what we want to have happening here is actually an alert. So React Native alert.
I was thinking that you'll do a label. Alert is good.
Let's make an alert. Something like this. And you see it also looks different than in Android and iOS, depending on the platform. We have some code with your favorite thing, copy, paste. Wonderful. This we don't need. So our alert title, what was that? Like author, I think. And here the alert message, in this case, we put something dynamic. We put the author name. And here in this third argument, you define the buttons, but we just have one button. This will be OK. Doesn't make sense in the scenario anyway, but we don't need anything else to happen when you press OK. So, and you cannot even cancel it. You have to press. You have to do something with it. OK, so what happens? Alert is not defined. OK, alert. There you go. And now, you get your author. So yeah,
we just hit 100 minutes. This was 100 minutes.
100
minutes, like 1 hour and 40 minutes. So, thank you so much, guys. This was really nice. Okay, thank you so much, guys, for bearing us for 100 minutes. This was great. We got to know a lot about Flutter. I'm not flattering about Flutter, but it is a great tool for performance. But still, I hold my ground for React Native. Maybe when you're doing mingling, then you can talk to each other and then see which part you are in. Let's then start the rings. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks.